Western University in Ontario continues to abuse the human rights of the students who attend that post-secondary institution. Yet still, one lawyer, James Kitchen, somehow managed to get the discriminatory school to capitulate and grant a single religious exemption to the vaccine mandate. Today we'll have his story. The university that forced ethics professor Dr. Julie Ponesse to abandon her career in favor of her conscience is now forcing students not just to be vaccinated, but to also be boosted against COVID-19 to attend on campus. Now, the civil liberties charity, the Democracy Fund, is doing something about it. They are fighting back against Western U. They've filed a lawsuit. Look at this. The Democracy Fund, TDF, together with lawyer Lisa Bildy of Libertas Law, assisted by Bruce Party of Rights Probe, will file a notice of application in the Ontario Superior Court of Justice in London, Ontario, on behalf of 5 students objecting to the use, collection, and storage of their private information by Western University. The legal finding will allege, among other things, that the university's collection of students' private health information is a breach of privacy. After the provincial government rescinded its directive, it discontinued the use of its Verify Ontario app on June 24, 2022. Western has repurposed its own digital portal to collect, store, copy, and use students' proof of vaccination. Now, to donate to the Democracy Fund's important work to fight Western's vaccine mandate, please visit noforcedboosters.com, where you can make a tax-deductible donation. Now, I have an interview with that lawyer I mentioned before, James Kitchen, who, by the way, does work with the Democracy Fund on other cases, to discuss how he was able to secure a religious exemption for a first-year Western student after she was first denied an exemption by the school. The student here is going to remain anonymous to prevent backlash and bullying. James, tell us how you were able to secure a religious exemption for this student.
Well, I don't really know, because the university won't say. And this is actually the thing I think that needs to be talked about more, is that when the universities say no or yes, obviously they say no way more than yes, they never give any reasons, okay? And this used to be unusual prior to COVID and unlawful. There is actually like a common law requirement that you give reasons. So whether you're a university or you're a government body, whatever you might be, if you don't give a reason, no matter how good the outcome is, like no matter how appropriate or lawful the outcome otherwise would be, the court will say, look, we're striking this down because by default it is unlawful. You did not give reasons. I don't care what your answer is. You didn't give reasons. And I do administrative law, so I've worked in this kind of thing and I've seen this before. And so in and of itself, the fact that people say no without reasons and then say yes without reasons, it shows the underlying problem of the fact that they feel like they can get away with doing whatever they want. And it's never about the law. It's always about power or politics or optics. That's all it's ever about, right? So why was this girl denied? I mean, I read her original material, right? I read what this student said to the university, okay? And it was great, right? The student talked about their beliefs in detail, okay? So the student gave a basis for why they couldn't take the shot because of their religious beliefs. Okay, so they met their onus on them at law. And the university said no. They didn't say why. They didn't say that the beliefs were not part of Christianity. They didn't say that the beliefs were not good enough. They didn't say that the beliefs didn't meet the legal test. They didn't say that they thought the student was lying and just making it up so that the student could be a Christian for a day, so he didn't have to take the vaccine. They didn't say anything. They just said no. I get involved. I write a letter. I tell them what the law is. They come back and they say yes. Why did they say yes? I'll tell you why they said yes. Because they didn't want to have to deal with this. They didn't want to have to deal with more backlash, more public pressure. They didn't want to deal with me talking about it and pushing back on them and actually telling people what the law really is. They didn't want to deal with that, right? What does that show? That shows that they don't care about the law. They only care about how much pressure is pushing them one way or the other, right? What's gonna save face the most? What's gonna be the easiest? What's gonna be the most convenient, right? That means we don't have any rule of law. That means we're back to Thomas Hobbes', brutish world of just whoever has the most power, right? This girl has now leveled the playing field because she's hired a lawyer, right? Well, that's not how it's supposed to be. You know, it's supposed to be that the law is respected because there's lots of people who are vulnerable, and we're supposed to have rights to protect minorities, vulnerable people who can't hire a lawyer, right? That's how it's supposed to work, but it's not working anymore. I saw this is the same thing that happened at University of Calgary last year. I had about a dozen students who were all denied initially, and then I wrote an appeal letter, and they were all granted. No reasons either time. It's wrong to say no to begin with because it's unlawful, but I think it's almost even worse to just constantly say no without reasons and then switch it around if that student goes off and wastes money that they should be spending on tuition and residence to hire a lawyer. It's awful. So, I mean, I'm glad that this student has got an accommodation at Western, obviously. You know, the accommodations were really rare out east last year.
Yeah.
We had a few out west at the Western universities. They were really rare out east. I'm glad to see this. I think this will be one of only a few that are granted. But it's really awful that the student had to go through this and that she's still left wondering, why did they say no? And why did they say yes?
You know,
because my belief didn't change.
It's so arbitrary. And I think a lot of it has to do with, well, then the university is going to be forced to show their work. Perhaps there will be disclosure involved if they continue to fight this, which means you'll get access to those hideous internal emails. You know, they're going to be hideous and bigoted. So instead of just have those things become public, they say, oh no, you know what? Forget it. We're not even going to deal with this. We see this all the time with the COVID tickets. Once it gets to the point where they're going to have to show us their communications about the person they ticketed, they quickly toss those tickets out. But in the interim, the Democracy Fund has to hire somebody, a lawyer, and do all this work just to get to the point to get the ticket thrown out. I think a lot of that is happening here.
Yep. Yeah, it's a game. I tell I tell my clients this whole thing is a game, which is really sad. It's sadistic. That's where our society's at. But that's how it works. We play the game, right? And the other side knows that we're going to lose that game because ultimately the courts are on their side. But another problem is that in Canada, there's so few resources. There's so few lawyers that do what I do.
Yeah.
Right. This is different in America. They have massive resources and massive armies of lawyers and support people who constantly push back on things. So this like lawfare, they call it, or this war of attrition, right? The left can't just win that automatically in the US. They can win it automatically in Canada because the lawyers, you know, the people that outnumber me and Lisa Bildy and Derek Frum, they outnumber us 100 to 1. So on pure resources, we can't keep up.
Yeah, that's it. It's really, you know, the Canadian Constitution Foundation, Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms, and the Democracy Fund. And that's it in a country of, you know, almost 40 million. Those are the civil liberties lawyers. That's it. And that's pretty frightening. Now, I know this student wants to remain anonymous, but what can you tell us? What are the particulars of her case?
Just simply that, you know, this is her first year at the university. Okay. So we have an interesting scenario, of course, because last year you have a whole bunch of students, first year or otherwise, that hadn't taken the shot, didn't want to, right? You know, a bunch of those were coerced into taking it. That's sad in and of itself. But then there's a small chunk that didn't take it and were kicked out, and then an even smaller chunk that didn't take it and were accommodated. Okay. This year, what you have is just a leftovers of those students, and I have some of those, and I'm working with those because they've gone on to different universities, right? Or they've gone on to graduate school or whatever. Then you have, of course, a few first-year students who haven't yet taken it. And so you have this really small group of people like this student who just haven't taken it and haven't been through this before, right? That this is round one for them with the universities. And so they're coming in and saying, look, you got this mandate, whether it's the boost or whether it's the first two, I can't take any of them because of my beliefs. I haven't yet. You need to accommodate me. And so obviously there's way less students in that category. And I have to wonder then if the universities will actually grant more accommodations this year because they got what they wanted last year. Right. They coerced 90% of the ones who didn't take it willingly. They coerced them into taking it. Right. Which is, I mean, again, like I said, it's sad. I have a couple other students where they took it last year. Right. They were coerced into it. They succumbed to it. They kind of naively hoped that would be it. They never have to take any more. And now it's this year and there's booster mandates like at Western. And they're saying, I'm not going to do this again. I can't do this again. I can't have you, rape my conscience and violate my bodily autonomy and violate my beliefs again. This has to stop. And that's a really, I'm glad to help those people, but man, it's painful for me to watch these people go through the turmoil. Like I'm reliving what they went through last year and now facing it all over again, thinking it was going to go away. Right. I mean, the analogy to rape really, really works. Right. I mean, that's what happens in the real world. right? The woman gives in and says yes, hoping it won't happen again, right? Or the people give in and say yes to the tyrant, hoping it won't happen again. Well,
Yeah.
history tells us, you say yes once, they'll just keep coming back for more, and you'll keep having to say yes again, and everything, all those rights and all those things will be violated over and over and over and over again. That's why it has to stop in the beginning. That's why people like me last year said, don't give them an inch, they'll take a mile, right? I mean, people like us have been saying since the beginning, yeah, 2 weeks to flatten the curve. You're talking 20 years to flatten our liberties. Here we are, we're 2.5 years in, we're still going, right? It's sad. It's sad to see what it's doing to people, you know, and people who like really just, I don't know, they just didn't, they're too trusting. They didn't really quite know history. They thought, I'll give in this once and it'll go away. These people aren't really that evil. They won't continue to do it if I just give in once. Here we are, round two, you know. I'd be surprised if we weren't doing this again next year with these universities. I hope we're not, but wouldn't be surprised. I said it last year. It's awful.
Yeah, you know, what were conspiracy theories quickly turned into conspiracy facts. And, you know, you didn't have to have a crystal ball to know what government will do when you give them the power. And like you say, there's a lot of people who are just too trusting. They thought, okay, fine, I'll do this and then it's over. And, you know, it was sold to people like that. Do this, then it's over. Then everybody gets their freedoms back because of this thing that you capitulated on. And now they've just sort of baited and switched those people. And I think it's really terrible what's happened to them. And I'm really happy to see that a bit of intervention from you can really, well, frankly, scare the daylights out of Western U.
I hope so.
Thanks, James. Now, I should tell you, late Tuesday after I spoke to James, Western obviously got shaky. They rolled back their booster mandate until January. Getting lawyers involved has spooked Western U regarding this religious exemption, but also the vaccine mandate in general. That's why it's so important to fight back against these bullies. For Rebel News, I'm Sheila Gunn Reid. To help the Democracy Fund in their lawsuit against Western University for the school's unconstitutional vaccine mandate, please visit noforcedboosters.com where you can make a tax-deductible donation.